Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Danny here today to talk to you about Christopher Paolini's newest book, The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm. This is a book that I was seriously excited about. I was browsing through Audible pre-orders and I saw it and I was like, Christopher Paolini's coming out with a new book. I gotta get it. Now, for those of you who don't know who Christopher Paolini is, he was a sensation when his first book came out. His first book was Eragon. He's the author of the Eragon series. And it's me and two of my boys, my two oldest boys. It's one of our favorite series. I have not done a review on this series because it's one that's been in my library forever. And I actually haven't listened to it in a while. I'll have to go back and re-listen to it now. But it's a book that I read to the kids when they were younger. And then this was before the days of Audible. I got the audio version of the book on cassette tape from the library so we could listen to it in the car as we drove. Hollywood came out. Hollywood did what Hollywood does best, and they made a horrible, butchered version of the book into a movie that was just pathetic and horrible. If you've watched the movie and gone, hey, this movie sucks, the movie sucks. So I'm not going to bother to read or listen to the book. Well, don't take the Hollywood version for fact. It's pathetic. The book is amazing. The entire book series is amazing. And then Christopher Paolini disappeared. Poof. Gone into the atmosphere, not writing anymore. He was 16 when he wrote Eragon. That was one of the things that was so amazing, was he was such a young, new author to write such an amazing book. And then he just, poof, disappeared into the atmosphere and left his fans going, okay, well, I guess we'll enjoy your Eragon series and, be stuck with that. Now he's out. And I was so excited. But there's also the worry. Was he a one-hit wonder? Was that series, that Eragon series, his one shot at fame and glory, and he hasn't written again because he hasn't been able to come up with that quality of a book? Not that he hasn't been able to write, but he hasn't been able to come up with that quality of a book. He hasn't had the desire. He hasn't, why hasn't he? Is this going to disappoint me? Or is this going to be everything that I would hope that it would be? And I'm about to tell you that. But before I get into that, if, like me, you love audiobooks, please subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, and come join me in my audiobook journey. Now, first off, the narrator. The original books were narrated by Gerard Doyle. Guess who narrates this one? I love it. Absolutely love it. Gerard Doyle is an amazing narrator who does a great job. He does voices that now, years later, it's been well over a decade since the last time that I listened to an Eragon. We have it in the print version. I have it in Audible, but it's still been probably a decade since I listened to it. And I can recognize each character's voice as Gerard does them because he did the original as well. The voices are distinct. You can tell male from female without even having to try to tell male from female. He just does a really, really good job narrating the series. And it's wonderful that Christopher Paolini, and by the way, you're sitting there going, he's always apologizing. Danny's always saying, oh, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. How come he knows Paolini's last name? How can he pronounce that so easily? It's because that was how big a deal he was back in the day. He was on the news. He was everywhere. And so you heard that name over and over and over again. And so I'm not trying to read it and pronounce it. I've heard it and can pronounce it. Anyhow, the narrator does an absolutely amazing job, as he did in the past. I'm so happy that Chris Paolini stuck with Gerard Doyle as the narrator. This is a series of short stories disguised as one long story. And he does a really, really good job of it. You basically take a day out of Eragon's life. So this is supposed to be about a year after the ending of the last book. Aragon is trying to establish a foothold, a place where they can train dragons and dragon riders and where the dragons can be safe. And you get to experience a day in the life of Aragon, which one day, yeah, it doesn't sound all that very interesting, does it? But what he's done is he's tied I think it's 4 short stories into this one day. So, and now my brain is farting. Now my brain is going, I'm not going to give you that name. They have the dragon hearts, which he has kept safe. And he's having a few challenges. And so the dragon hearts, who are keeping track of what's going on in the world, they give him an experience from out in the wide world. And this introduces a story about Murdoch. If you don't know who Murdoch is, no, not Murdoch from the A-Team. Although Murdoch from the A-Team is like seriously cool. But not Murdoch from the A-Team. Murdoch, his half-brother. You get a really nice story about him and what's going on with him. And it gives you a chance to see where Murdoch is at, mentally, emotionally. It throws a mystery in there because Murdoch is investigating something that I think I know what he's investigating. I'm like 75% sure I know what he's trying to find and investigate, but I'm not 100% sure. And it's an action story. It's got a really good fight scene in it. It's got him helping out a young girl. It's a good story. You get a story, then Angela the Herbalist comes to him. And Angela the Herbalist wants some help. And she's written a book, her memoirs, that she wants him to read. Now, the Angela the Herbalist part of the story, according to Christopher Paolini at the end of the book, he gives a brief talk about where he's at. And, I don't know what you would call it. I guess an afterword, but it's an afterword about him, how the book came around, what caused him to write this book. His sister, Angela Paolini, who I guess from what he says in the afterword, the Angela the Herbalist was her part of the story. See, I didn't know that. I didn't know he collaborated with his sister, but that's cool. But she threw this story in there. She wanted to carry on the story of Angela the Herbalist. And so you get the story of Angela the Herbalist. Now, when he first starts reading Angela the Herbalist's story, it's kind of weird. You're almost like, okay, should I skip this part? Quite honestly, that was my thought at first, was should I skip this part? Because she's talking about how she used to not know much, just because you think something is true doesn't make it true. It seems like the stars rotate across the sky, but then she learned that, the earth is what's rotating and the stars are stationary and stuff like that, where you're just going, I don't really get it. Hang in there, listen to it. The story becomes much more interesting, much more entertaining, and that opening blurb does have some important information for where the story is going. You learn how, I don't want to say how Angela becomes as powerful as Angela is, but anyhow, you learn some things about Angela that are actually important. You get a story about the Urgals. This was probably my favorite of, this was my favorite of the short stories. It's the last one in there. It's the longest, but I really liked it. It's dramatic, it's entertaining, and it's told by an Urgal, and it gives you insight into the Urgal way of thinking, into the Urgal way of life. It involves the Urgals battling a dragon, and it's told to Aragon and to Saphira, and you get Saphira's reaction at the end of the story, a story about what used to be their mortal enemy, the Urgals battling a dragon. It's it's left off in such a way that you know there's going to be another book in the series. There just has to be. It's not left at a cliffhanger, but it is left with an event happening that no self-respecting author would go, okay, here's what's happening, exciting news, and we're going to end it. And there's going to be more books in this series. The title lets you know that the Fork, the Witch, the Worm, I think it's the Tales of Aragon or something like that. Anyhow, Volume 1. The way the entire title is written, you know this is part of a series, so there will be more coming out. I'm so happy for that. I loved Aragon. I love the world that Christopher Paolini created with Aragon, and it's nice to have that world back. This does not have the high drama, high danger, I'll say, that the first series had. I mean, the Aragon series, if you listen to that entire series, it's about a small country boy, suddenly becoming a dragon rider, discovering that he's the son of the king, and he basically has to kill the king, who has been living for 1,000 years and is this evil tyrant out to destroy everything, enslaving dragons and everything else. And the original series, all the way up until the final book, it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. There is literally no way that Aragon can win this battle. It's just an impossibility. How is Christopher Paolini going to give him the ability to defeat Galbatorix, the evil king? And things happen in the final book, and obviously Aragon does end up winning. This book doesn't have that. It doesn't have that edge of your seat thriller feel to it. It's more of a sit back, listen, enjoy. Doesn't mean it's not really good. It is very good. It's not written to be the same kind of book as Aragon. That's very obvious. It's a series of short stories. Short stories don't have that long build-up that takes. I mean, there are 3 books in the Aragon series. I'm looking down there at where our books are and trying to pick them out. We got a lot of books in this house. I think there's 3 in the Aragon series, possibly 4, and they're all good, thick books, So with a short story, you can't have that build-up kind of a thing. So don't go into these stories expecting that. Go into these stories expecting them to be short stories. Really well done short stories. Christopher Paolini and his sister Angela did not disappoint. Gerard Doyle did not disappoint. It's following Aragon, so there's no adult material for me to warn you about. No language, no sex, it's perfectly safe. I was reading these books to my kids when they were little, which is my 2 oldest. It's one of their favorite series because they're old enough to remember it. My youngest, he never really got into it because he was too young to remember it. So I read it to them at that age. It is perfectly safe. If y'all like my video, please hit the like button. If you like my channel, subscribe. Turn on notifications. Questions, comments, feedback. It's what the comment section is for. Please put them in there. But most importantly, as I always say, no matter what else you do today, make sure that today you listen to at least one really good audiobook. And I definitely recommend The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm by Christopher and Angela Paolini. Thank you.